Hello and welcome to the podcast where we explore the possibilities of game design, economy, balancing, and all those things related to the underlying commercial direction of games. And I'm delighted today to be talking to Nick Murray. Nick, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Hey. So I've been working in free-to-play games predominantly for about 15 years, and one of the jobs that I currently do, I'm a freelance consultant, and I try to help people improve their game economies in order to improve the game experience, usually in order to improve retention, monetization, and overall LTV industry.
No, exactly. But I think it's really key what you said there is you're trying to make a better experience. The economy is the vector to do that. The result is a more commercially effective experience if we happen to have got everything working and the game works and the audience likes it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I guess if you were to think about the hierarchy of how important things are in a game, I would probably put economy at kind of maybe second. I'd say, like, first you've got the element of fun. Like, you've got to have a fun core game.
Yeah.
After that, you've got progression systems and economy, which all come together. And that's the thing that makes you go, wow, not only is this fun, it's deep and there's more I can do. And
I think it's a bit like a yin and yang in my head. It's like, can you really have the full fun if you don't also have the frame in which the fun sits, which to me is what the economy delivers? Does that make any sense?
yeah, for sure. The game I like talking about anyway, because I just think it's wonderful, Hades. If you think about that as like, you've got a very strong core game, and then you've got meta layers of upgrades that are built within an economy. The core game, technically, you could beat the one run of the core game without knowing anything. Like, if you were really great at the game, you could do it all. But the economy is the bit that really keeps you engaged and goes like, but you don't need to be the best player. Like, you can get knocked out, come back, and then we'll invest, we'll increase the fun a little bit, we'll increase your options and make you feel like you're getting better. So as you say, the economy is the vector by which the content is kind of given out bit by bit in a way that is compelling and hopefully feels rewarding for the player.
No, exactly. But like I say, the thing I find fascinating about that whole process is, what does economy mean in that principle? What is it? What practically is it? Because I mean, obviously, I have thoughts, books about, but what do you think is what makes an economy functional?
I mean, on a very practical level, it's sources and sinks and pretty much it. How you as a player receive currencies, and then you have choices and hopefully some agency over how you use your resources now to improve your experience.
Yeah, and that agency to me is really important, because one of the things I'm fascinated by is the psychology behind the whole process, the role that social status plays in the process. And it's kind of one of the things that I find fascinating is like, when is a resource not a resource? So if we're earning gold but there's no other way to show off how successful I've been in the game, will I actually ever end up spending that gold? Because that will diminish the number of gold I have and therefore the points that I've earned, essentially. Does that make any sense?
I think so, but I mean, it sounds like at that point you have kind of a redundant currency, right? Like, I mean, if you just accumulate a big pile of gold and sit on it like a dragon in a mountain, it's maybe not like a well-designed system, because
yes,
for some gamers, there is a definite idea of an economy should be about the accumulation of a thing. It should be about number going up. It's the large basis of a lot of kind of clicker games, a lot of idle games. Getting just bigger and bigger numbers. Wonderful. Realistically, not having anywhere to reinvest that money, even if it's just to make that money go up even more or at a better rate, is a bit of a failure in game design, I would say.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'm actually thinking about a very early mobile game. I can't remember what it was called, but yeah, there was a whole bunch of games where you could watch ads to avoid having to spend type thing, and therefore people didn't spend at all because of X, Y, Z. There's little things like that. So I mean, let's continue. So the economy is. So what exactly is that economy to you? It's the mechanism, the process of progression, but functionally, how do you come about, looking at how you design something that would feel like a more engaging economy?
I mean, that's a large question, but at a fundamental level, I guess the first step is to have your game loops kind of well mapped out. So you've got your core game loop, and then ideally you've got metagame loops where you see that there is a system of investment which then feeds back into the core game. Once you have those loops down on paper, you can already start to kind of see how the flow of currency should go. Because you know, okay, in this metagame system, I'm going to be spending a resource, doesn't matter what at this point, on getting stronger, on, I don't know, progressing some building upgrade, any of these things. And then the effects of this is going to go back into the core. So I would say start by mapping it out in kind of game loop form. And then quite often the thing that I do, once you've got this part down, is put everything in a table. And it feels a bit like maybe doubling up on the work somehow, or like repeating yourself. But I find it really useful just to kind of read a table, and basically you put kind of actions down the left hand, like down the y-axis, and along the x you put different currencies. And you say, okay, open loot box. And alongside that you have, okay, that's costing me hard currency. So I put -1 in hard currency, and that's going to give me, I don't know, hero shards or something like that. And I put 1 in the hero shard currency category. And it's just a basic way of being able to go through all of the different systems and match up an action to currencies, making sure that there is a sync, and then what comes out of you spending the resource, here is that item, here is that upgrade, whatever. And then at the end of that, you basically have a table of -1s, 1s, and 0s occasionally, where it might be a system where you put in something and you get something similar out. And then you have a sum column at the bottom, or a sum row rather, where it says, okay, here is +5, here is -10, etc. But it's just a very kind of quick glance way of going, okay, well, I've only got like one net hard currency sync at this point. That is clearly not going to be enough for this game. You know, on the contrary, I've got 10 soft currency sources, but no syncs for them. So this is just another way of making sure that you're kind of sanity checking the process that might not always be as visible when you're doing it in game loop form.
Yeah, I tend to use a grid where I've got a row of that says syncs, a row that says sources, and then in the middle I've got them divided into columns. One column tends to be player, another tends to be the action, another column tends to be progression, then I'll have offers, and sometimes I'll also have season. And what I try to do is then basically use post-it note type principle, where I've always got 2. So if it's gold, I've got 2. Sometimes I have more than 2, but you know, it's got to be at least 2. At least one has to go into a source. At least one has to go into a sync. So of all of the attributes, I know where in the game that process is occurring, and that way I can visually see very quickly what's going on and why. But I also like the way you're saying about the table is a really nice format as well. You know, having a kind of list of the various syncs, various, you know, currencies is really interesting, because, you know, knowing that I'm going to do this thing and that is going to cost me that, and I will gain that. You know, whether that costing me is watching an ad, or whether it's beat the boss, or physically using the gold that I've earned through play, or the diamonds I've bought. Again, really nice, simple way of getting a good understanding. I suppose in some ways the advantage that your kind of table has is that we can start applying some maths to that very quickly. Gives you an instant kind of like, you can just do the sum at the bottom and the horizontally. These sums actually add up. Is that kind of the way you handle it?
I mean, yeah, I think it's good kind of as a quick sanity check measure.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not how to design a functional economy, my work here is done.
Yeah.
Because obviously when you're doing kind of +1, -1, and 0, you're not taking into account the scale of any of these things.
Well, I was going to get into next. It's a kind of currency exchange value. And do you have a way of creating a baseline for what that value is for each of these items?
Not really. I mean, I feel like whenever I do economy design, I often treat every game as its own thing anyway. Like, there are always games that have unique currencies, unique systems, and no matter which approach I take, it always needs to feed back into, like, what is the player goal here? Are they looking to gain in power? Are they looking to progress through a saga map, etc.? So I don't have like a kind of standardized methodology of like, here is how to ascribe like value or something to the different currencies.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it? Because I don't know about you, but I'm often asked, what's the algorithm for this? I'm actually trying to work out one that I can use as a rule of, like, finger in the air rule of thumb, because I'm trying to map kind of like, almost like an S-curve style process of, like, if I want to have difficulty, I want to create texture to it. I want to make sure that you've got these moments which are disproportionately difficult, so they're satisfying, and then followed by other moments which are more lenient and therefore make you feel more powerful. Those sorts of like textures. But it's a kind of finger in the air rule of thumb place to start, rather than this is what's going to work. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think economy design in general is an iterative process,
Yes.
right? Like, there's a reason that even companies like King, who've been running Candy Crush for the last 13 years, they still do economy design work on it. It's never finished. So it is an iterative process. You need to have very clear goals in mind. It changes depending on if your players are like early adopters and very enthusiastic about the genre versus the game is kind of running on autopilot, or you're trying to open it to more casual users. Like, there are so many different factors that go into how you balance and define the economy of a game that, like, you can't just kind of feed it in, have an algorithm spit it out and go, it's done, it's perfect.
This is the number.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think what I find fascinating about it, it's something, it's oddly a lesson I learned from running role-playing games. I used to run a dilemma-based game. In fact, I've started doing a podcast based on it. And when you have a kind of set of rules set up and people play through it the first time, the next time they encounter it, they try to game the rules. So knowledge of the system impacts the way that the system is exploited and leveraged, which in turn affects the way that the balancing processes operate. So it's almost like exponential iteration, if that makes sense.
So you're saying you would need to have something that increases the difficulty or keeps up with the expertise of your players.
Yes,
just so that they're always being met at their level instead of, okay, this week they're ahead, this week they're behind. But actually, like you said earlier, having that kind of back and forth of like, okay, but now it's harder, now it's easier, I think that keeps the intrigue and it allows players to feel both challenge and mastery, which are important.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not recommending you behave like that. I'm just saying that's why the attempts to automate, here is a magic formula, or wave a wand and my economy will just magically now give me all the correct numbers. The reason why I don't think that works is because I think humans are crazy in the best possible way.
Yeah. I mean, read any book about behavioral economics, right? And you see how irrational people actually are. So machine learning will get us so far, but I think you're never going to be able to cater to everybody with that approach anyway.
Exactly. And I think, but that's it at the end of the day. I think, so I'm a big fan of kind of the use of machine learning and stuff like that to find the patterns that we don't know. But to my mind, it's about nudging, not about using that information without a sanity check, if that makes sense. I think it's really useful to be informed on what the predictions are going to be, to then do the thing you think is the right thing to do for the player and see what the delta is, what the differences are. And I think the more information we have, the more insight we get, the easier it is for us to then actually apply the learning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I think, honestly, having a gut feeling about what you're doing, having this instinct of going like, well, actually, you know, I've been working on this game for a long time. I'm playing this game a lot. This is how I feel the economy could be made better. Is a better first step than trying to look at data to optimize. Far better to start with your own feeling, build a hypothesis out of it, and then validate that, and then make a change.
But it's that validating. I think that's the step. I think we're hoping to get into some of the sort of errors and mistakes that we've experienced as we carry on this conversation. But I think it's kind of hints at some of the kind of things, which is one of the issues I've seen is people going with their gut without treating it like an experiment. Without, and sinking the farm, betting the farm on this thing working before they've checked, and especially in the last, in the current climate, in the last couple of years, where it seemed to me that particularly on mobile, behaviour changed quite significantly. The kinds of audiences we were attracting and the way that they would retain and then convert seemed to have some levels of profound change. So ways of design that were working previously seemed to stop working quite so well. Now, like, lots of different reasons why that could have happened, but I think it's interesting. I think Anyway, what do you think? Am I onto something here? Is there do you think there have been too many people placing too many big bets before testing properly, or am I being
I mean,
scamming that?
absolutely. Think I think it happens quite regularly
Yeah,
because it's very. If you release a game and you're in soft launch and you start getting those early KPIs, it's usually at about that time where somebody goes, "Well, actually, our economy, like, it doesn't. I don't know. Players aren't sticking around. Why is it? We've got all these great features, but I don't know. Maybe there's something wrong with the balance." And then somebody comes up with a brilliant idea and says, "We're not generous enough. Multiply everything by two."
yeah,
And these kind of blanket changes are great for A/B testing. They are not great for chucking out and hoping for the best
yeah.
without
No,
checking,
exactly.
like you said.
Well, you remind me because I remember back in the day. This is because I'm so old. We were I was running the mobile platform for 3 back in the old mid P Java phone days. So we did a sale. We thought, I know, everything's a third off, fantastic, and we had a fantastic result. We had 3 times the revenue that month, fantastic. For the next 2 months, we had a third of the revenue. The net result was zero benefit,
Hmm.
but that let me learn. So the next time I did a sale, what I did is I did a sale every week for a small number of games. And eventually it led to me I introduced a new game at a higher price than I'd previously ever sold games at. I had them on that for that price for 6 weeks, and then I reduced the price after the 6 weeks to half that. And then 6 weeks later, I reduced it to £1. And then eventually, 1 week after that, I took the game off the service. The net result of that mindset, because it was a small number of games, because games were being introduced at higher value, people had changed their behaviour completely by the way I'd structured it. We were seeing that players who had previously only ever bought games at £1 decided to buy a game at £3 because they couldn't be bothered to wait the couple of weeks till it got reduced. Rather than the Steam situation where we don't bother buying anything until it's on sale, we saw people choosing to buy earlier at a higher price because of the value proposition being more than just the number. And this whole thing, I mean, honestly, we ended up with the most revenue per user in the world in terms of mobile games, but obviously mobile Java games was less money than, say, someone like Supercell makes every month globally. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
But, I mean, have you seen these kind of weird phenomena like that where a kind of mistake or a lack of data has led to a later realization and an improvement that transforms things?
I mean, yes, but I think honestly, more often I've seen a kind of doubling down effect.
Yeah, yeah,
So I worked for some time at a company where they introduced the concept of the tiered spender. So you spend a certain amount of money, you get a free reward. But if you spend, I don't know, $20 instead of 10, then you get an even better reward on top. And
yeah,
it's just a rewarded spending, get bonus
yeah.
items. And it worked wonders, like you say, like for the first kind of few months, spectacular revenue. And then you train your players to get used to it.
Mm,
And they stop spending when there isn't one of these things running because, well, why would I? Because I'm not optimizing my spending at this point.
exactly.
Um, and then you get into the struggle of going like, well, okay, well then maybe we'll have like event based tiered spenders as well as ones that run for the whole month that are like a kind of loyalty program, so that in between the event based ones, there's still reason to spend. You're still progressing towards something, and then you end up just stacking these things on top of each other until you have 4 or 5 running simultaneously.
And it's such a complex thing to manage, and I think you end up confusing players.
Yeah, I mean they get kind of hit with paralysis of like, is now the best time to spend?
Yeah,
Like, am I just going to instantly have buyer's remorse after I make this purchase because
yeah,
tomorrow there's going to be something where actually I would have benefited more if I'd spent then? But you can still counteract this as well. Like I will
yeah.
say, and I will name them as well. Epic Games Store. I had a very good experience where I'd bought something on the Epic Games Store and it went on sale like a few days afterwards, and they wrote me an email and refunded me the difference.
Oh wow.
And I thought that was incredible.
And I think it's a difficult one because I'm kind of torn on it, and the reason I'm torn on it is, um, you know, the reduced price is a specific offer for a specific period. Now, if we rebate everybody who's previously bought that thing, or at least a proportion of people, there's an issue. To me, a better solution more manageable solution for a dev would be to just simply make sure there's a period of time when you foreshadow that it's coming.
Yeah, but then I guess you might put players off purchasing something else.
I get it. But isn't that coming back down to the same problem, which is what is the offer doing beyond just the money? What is the value doing beyond just the money?
I mean, in some ways, it's turning you into a spender on the platform, right? I mean, in this case, for example, I liked my experience and I liked the fact they refunded me because it made me feel like, wow, you guys are really trying to take care of your customers.
It's a great approach, absolutely. I'm just wondering where you draw the lines, and is it something that you should always do? I'm not, from a consumer point of view, the answer would usually be an obvious yes. But from us having to work out the commercials of a game, it's full of holes that it's the classic can of worms where every worm opens a new can.
Yeah, I mean, so to extrapolate this slightly, in the case of a game, I'd struggle to reimburse someone based on a purchase they'd made outside of a sale period
Yeah.
if the thing went on sale immediately afterwards.
Yeah.
I think if you can do it, then I would only do it for like a first purchase as well.
Yeah.
As like here's a one-off thing, a gift from us to you, because it creates this kind of loyalty, this trust. And then, if there's a clear understanding that this won't happen again, fair enough. But as you say, the amount of work that would actually go into pulling this off might also be quite tough.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing in my mind really, is the fact that the manual intervention required would probably cost you more than the payment back you would be giving, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, potentially the lifetime value of the customers that you then keep around expands significantly. You never really know.
And I think you've just said there the reason why you would do or not do it if you knew the lifetime value impact. Because like you said early on, lifetime value is probably the most defining factor here, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the thing that any economic decision really has to try and feed into. And you have to tread that line of like retention and monetization. And if you can get good enough results in both, that's great. But there will be times where your retention will be, I don't know, slightly higher, and then you can actually like push a bit higher on monetization and maybe rebalance that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the ultimate goal is always going to be about building strong lifetime value. It's the only way games can scale at a reasonable level.
Exactly. So, I mean, we've given one example there, kind of like use of data and kind of like understanding how to, deal with it. I mean, or is there? I'm just thinking, is there more in this whole? I think what I find interesting about that whole premise, particularly about the way that you were refunded, is the whole principle about looking at the economy as more than just a transaction and as part of a journey, a user experience. Whether you want to call that customer relationship management, whether you want to call that onboarding, whether you want to talk about conversion. We are really talking, I think, about that whilst the economy is part of what keeps the game going, it's also part of our relationship with the audience and their relationship with the game. So when you're thinking like that, how does that affect the way that you're thinking about design, balance, how hard you want to go in terms of costs for things, etc.?
I guess the way that I like to think about it is, like you say, it's the player journey, and I try and imagine it as if it's written in some kind of epic fantasy style, because I feel like that's a kind of good proxy that most people can imagine, and then you kind of start going through it as a player, and you go, okay, I set foot in the world of Tethys or whatever, and now, like, I upgraded my troops, and then we marched on the capital. I was beaten by the general. I had to go away and regroup and invest in my military strength. Like, purchases and any economic decisions that come in with the sources and sinks, or the what was it, the faucets and
drains.
Thank you, faucets and drains.
There are so many variants of the same principle, but yeah.
All of these transactions feed into that narrative, feed into that player journey. Ultimately, the game and the design of the game and the economy of the game is all to provide an exciting player journey. It's all
Yeah.
to make that, fantasy novel an exciting and, fun bit, like,
Meaningful.
like later
Yeah.
bits of Lord of the Rings, but not the bit with Tom
Yeah.
Bombadil towards the beginning.
I missed the Tom Bombadil. That's right. I'm sure it was important at some point. Anyway, but yeah, no, I think that's it. I think this idea, and if you think about effectively the economy puts a price on the meaningful impact of the components that you are thinking, of the components you are sourcing. I think it means, because at the end of the day, they are just numbers in a database. What is gold? What is food? What is wood? It's kind of irrelevant, arguably, until it becomes exchangeable, until the action that you're going to do where you think happens. So I think there's something kind of in that whole sphere. Where was I going to go with that? It's more about thinking about what, in terms of then taking that further, looking at, if we go back to this kind of idea of like, what does that exchange rate? A lot of the designers I talk to talk about it as fundamentally a comparison of effort versus time, essentially. The kind of reward time balance, essentially. So I put in this much effort, I will get these resources. The resources are flavored, so they might be used for certain things. That allows me to introduce dilemma, choice. I do these I'm going to go hunt rats because they give me fur. I'm going to hunt spiders because they give me silk. It's only when I've got fur and silk that I can make clothing, maybe, whatever it might be. So I think it's interesting. I don't think it is just benefit versus time. I do think it's also about introducing choice and autonomy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's more nuanced, like you say. If you were to just imagine a kind of a graph of benefit time, it would be like, a straight line, pretty much, or at least a linear.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Yeah, but it should feel like, okay, I spend time, I gain benefit. I spend time, I gain benefit.
Yeah.
But in reality, that's actually not what players want, I don't think.
It's not even interesting.
Yeah, because if everything is predictable, if you're just on a fixed path, then really you have no agency. You have no excitement either. If you have agency and if you can start setting some of your own goals, making your own decisions as to how you're going to play, the things you're going to do, what you're going to invest your currency in, that's no longer reflective necessarily of time or effort, but rather, player desire. And yes, time is a very, very important factor when it comes to designing economies. It's absolutely pretty much the main thing I use to design economies. But I don't think that negates this whole element of choice and player agency that we've discussed.
So if a straight line is not necessarily good, how do you know what good looks like?
I mean, it depends on the game to some degree, but like you and I discussed before, I mean, typically for most games, I try and design with a kind of S-curve in mind, where you are making like quick progress in the early stages, rapidly leveling up, and then it goes kind of leveling up a bit more each time into a kind of straight line, and then you've got the flatlining at the end where now you're leveling up regularly every 5 hours or so, let's say, because you don't want to keep shifting the goalposts and making players work harder and harder and harder. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the kind of general approach I would take, but it does depend on genres as well. It depends on different types of games. For example, games where you're dealing with like a power progression more than like a level progression, that can be quite difficult to achieve sometimes because maybe there are multiple ways of gaining power. Like it's not just all on one track. You're not just getting like time. It does not necessarily just equal power, but rather time and collecting these resources, doing these side activities gets power in these different ways. It's much more difficult to build a kind of reliable S-curve out of it, but it's still a good starting point.
And that's when we end up with these problems in some of these sort of MMO or kind of like sandbox games, where if you just go off and do all the side quests before you ever go and do the main quest, you're like almost like going into God mode, because you become, massively powerful, and then you go and you have to do this first level thing again. You just dominate it, and it becomes tedious. Well, when it has been done badly, it can almost become tedious.
Yeah, because, I mean, as with like you mentioned with economy earlier, it's economy also dictates how challenging, like how difficult something is. Like
Yeah.
if you are massively like receiving too many resources, and I class XP as a resource as well,
Yep.
but you're also receiving
Absolutely.
gold, and then you can go and buy better equipment, and then you still have to go back and do like story
Yeah.
quests that are 10 levels beneath you. It's dull.
Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, some games deal with that, reasonably well. But I mean, you can take it. To me, the classic example is Skyrim. That screws it up really badly, but in a way I don't mind. I can't really describe it. It's still one of my favorite games of all time. But if we all know the adventures where you go in, you go against the hard monster, and then you're actually going to do the final mission. Felt like an underwhelming moment. If you did it in different order, it would have been a fantastic moment.
Yeah, I mean, you ask a lot of a player when they have to start going on like forums and sites to
Yeah,
like look up, how should I play this game?
yeah,
Like, how many side quests should I do in the first area? It's
yeah.
um, it's frustrating.
Yeah, it's also some of the part of the fun in some games as well. To be fair, um,
Being
so
overpowered can feel great,
it can,
undoubtedly.
it definitely can. I mean, as somebody who has a D&D character that is a Gloomstalker and is about to multiclass to thief in order to get the sneak attack. Yes, I am murder hoboing and proud.
Nice.
But again, this is like I say, different things, different strokes, different folks. We're realizing the core principle of how do we ensure that we create a good balancing process, dealing with understanding of the power levels, of the progression level. I mean, are there any tricks or tips that you use to sort of help make your life easier? How do you keep track of all of these different components that you're generating here?
I mean, it's easier said than done, but generally, what I would try and do is, I mean, you basically build the whole economy as much as you can in Excel or in Google Sheets or any other equivalent, and then really you're looking at, I would say, trying to design a player journey. It's more than about like what your expectations are of how a player will play the game. And like we talked about earlier, you can't predict, like you can't say all players are going to play in this way. People are irrational. They do things that you never think they would. But what you can do is have a benchmark of yourself and go, okay, well, actually, I would build it in this way because I think, like, at this point of the game, I'm probably going to be looking more to upgrade power quickly to overcome these challenges because I've got my difficulty curve here. So I'm going to probably be investing in these things, not these things. And you start almost going through a kind of decision tree of what a player will likely do. And I mean, unfortunately, nothing will be a replacement for actually testing it out and then
Exactly.
being able to play around with it and then being able to say, well, actually, I was totally wrong, and everybody spent all their money on the very first mission, and that's a disaster. But like I said, economy is an iterative process. So
Yeah.
to some degree, you have to have gut feeling and guesswork, and as long as you're logical and asking questions, I really think asking questions is a highly underrated thing. But like
Yeah.
when it comes to actually doing economy design, I write out questions. I say like, where will I spend at level one? What about level two, three, four, five? Will the store offers be appealing to me at this point? And just trying to put yourself in the shoes of a player going through these decisions, I think is really worthwhile.
Yeah, and quite often, I think we overestimate the amount of information that a player can parse at any particular point. It's so because we're already in the game, we already understand the game, and we're asking somebody to follow a flow that we're designing, and yet they've also got to have made the decision that this is the game they want to play. We don't know what is going on in their life that moment. Are they having an incoming call? Are they having to catch a bus, or are they waiting for some bad news from the GP or something? I don't know. I mean, there might be any number of things getting in the way of a person. So I think we always have to sort of try and sort of step back. I don't know about you, but I in my kind of when I've done the spreadsheet model, I tend to put in payout rates as probabilities rather than as almost like trying to map a kind of funnel. Essentially, I think this percentage of people will get to this stage, and then they will get this percentage will get through to the next stage, or this percentage will do this, and then this percentage will do that. Is that the kind of modeling you're referring to?
Yeah, so I mean, basically what I would do, I mean, what I've typically done is try to break the game down into different phases
Yeah.
because so different mechanics will be available at different phases.
Yeah.
Also, players will, in theory, get better at the game and potentially lose less later on. So you
Yeah.
basically start with saying like, okay, here's the tutorial, here is early game, mid game, late game, let's say. You can obviously break it down into more than that, but then with each of these things, you're saying, okay, playing the core game at this point, what is the expected chance of success? What is the expected payout based on that chance of success? And then how long is that interaction going to take? And
Yeah.
through these things, you can basically build very quickly a model of, okay, so in order to progress, they're going to have to do this many iterations or like this many plays of the core game, at which point they're going to receive about this much currency, and
Yeah.
here are the sinks for that currency. And at this stage of the game, these are the things that will be unlocked. They will be looking mostly to buy this, this, and this.
Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, I think machinations is another one I find really interesting. Again, I've used it simply, but I haven't used it in some of the more complicated ways. Have you seen any tools out there that's made? Because it seems to me everyone seems to just default to a spreadsheet. Is that because it's the only way to do it, or are there basically could there be better ways to do it?
I'm sure there could be better ways. And to be honest, I mean, I've seen very early versions of machinations, but
Yeah.
I haven't seen it recently, so I couldn't speak to how good it is. But yeah, I mean, undoubtedly there are better ways of doing this, and just kind of being able to very quickly insert like, okay, here is like the table we talked about earlier, actually, of minuses and plus ones. That would be a perfect thing to be able to throw into potentially an AI model and have it
Yeah.
spit out a spreadsheet. And then you
Absolutely.
tune the spreadsheet based on the questions or the inputs you give to the AI model. I can absolutely believe that that would be something coming in the not too distant future.
So we talked a lot about kind of the process of how we look at an economy, how we start working out what that economy looks like, and the iterative process of putting numbers often in a spreadsheet, playing with that until we get a sense of when our playtests come through with the data, they match our expectations, eventually to the point where we can see a positive engagement. So that's great. What are the kind of big things that often come up, or barriers, blockages, the kind of problems that you often see coming up that a designer should be wary of?
I mean, A/B testing is a big one.
Yeah.
Quite often, games are built quickly and at low cost, and quite often teams do not have the expertise nor the infrastructure to be able to support A/B testing.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's a really good one. Like, you don't absolutely need it. You can still improve your economy without. It's just, it speeds things up. It helps you find a kind of, maybe a stronger starting point a bit quicker. And apart from that, I don't know. I don't think there are any kind of huge barriers. One of the best things about economy design is that it's numbers. You can change numbers quickly, and you usually don't need to like push an update or anything to do it either. It's like, it's very straightforward.
Assuming you put things on a server.
Yes, assuming you put things on a server. One of the bigger challenges of economy is also that it's very easy to break. And I have seen many instances where the economy has been broken by someone tapping on an extra zero or one too few zeros, for example.
Well, for me, it's they didn't notice a positive feedback or a negative feedback loop. So play ends up, because they hadn't paid attention to that process, that doing this gives you this, and therefore because it's doing that and it's giving you the extra thing, you're now got an oversupply of one thing or an undersupply of something, which gets to the point where you can't function, you can't progress as a user. That's the one that I've seen happen quite often.
Yeah, I mean, reaching kind of the dead end points is awful. Like, there always needs to be a way for a player to carry on playing your game. If they can burn all their currency and then be stuck forever, that's not good game design as well.
Exactly, yeah. Well, I don't necessarily mean absolutely. I'll give you the example is a bunch of games used to have it so that you go into the big boss fight and you're slightly underpowered and you get defeated and you have all of your rewards taken away from you up to that point. So now you can't get any better because you've got to beat the boss to be able to go past the next point. But you always lose all the points. So you're only relying on the skill of the player which becomes very punishing. And so somebody who may be slightly dyspraxic like me will never, ever get past that boss because they'll never have the chance to upscale the character's capacity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I think modern game design has largely moved on from that kind of model, giving you like
You'd
parallel
think.
paths to some degree. But in most
I'm
games,
being unfair, but I noticed that one a lot, particularly the number of people still trying to make platform games and having to follow the perfect timing when you're like me and you can't do that, physically can't do it. It's like, it's not fun. Anyway, sorry,
yeah,
I was interrupting you.
no, all good. I mean, like I say, I think in general there are a lot of games out there that have, particularly on mobile, where there are now compelling meta games where
Yes.
you have like multiple paths of improvement of progression. So if you are in a mid-core RPG, it's not just about like leveling up your hero, but it's also about like investing shards in them, getting gear
Yeah.
on them, and like there's parallel paths to improving your power. That's a bit of
Yeah,
a mouthful.
exactly. Parallel paths to improving your power. So I say that when you're drunk.
It's a self-help seminar.
Yeah. So, no, exactly right. Exactly. I totally get that. So, and I think you're right. There has been, I think one of the things I think you're describing though is slightly more common in the mobile world because I think not everybody kind of necessarily feels this way, but I think there's been quite a stark evolutionary function in mobile to be able to have a successful game. I think you've had to evolve your processes. Now, you could argue that's taken mobile games down a particular line. I'm not sure that's fair, but I do understand why people are maybe not so keen on it, on the style of mobile games. But I do still see quite a lot of the sort of more traditional designs still persisting, even if they could be better in Steam or PC, or sorry, PC or console games. Is that fair, or am I being mean on Steam games?
No, I mean, I think in general there is an understanding that for PC console games, there is a certain segment of those games where player skill is far more important.
Yes.
Player skill is not usually such a big factor in mobile.
Yeah.
Mobile tends to be more about fulfilling different progression criteria.
Don't get me wrong. I actually think that applying player skill is incredibly important. It makes our job as an economy designer much harder because different players' skill progression curves are going to be different, and how you track that is going to be down to how you do your testing, all that kind of stuff, and to what extent it affects what power upgrades you give people. I mean, to my mind, Call of Duties of this world is one of the sort of more problematic games. I can't play a modern first-person shooter, despite the fact they're my first love when it comes to PC gaming. I physically can't play them because I will be beaten. Back to this dyspraxia thing. I will headshot dead. Oh, and I'm old. I'm not 14 anymore. Apparently that's still a thing. But I can still play Fortnite because I can avoid like nobody, and therefore I can come second. And I probably killed no more than a dozen people in Fortnite ever, and yet I've come second, 100 or so times.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, Fortnite is a game that actually does have a parallel progression. It does have
Yes.
like more than just shooting. So even just the building, having the building component alongside means you don't have to have mastery of just one thing.
Yeah.
Call of Duty is not like that.
No, Call of Duty is definitely not that. And better, worse yet, Call of Duty, we benefit you for beating somebody, making the distance between you and the other player even greater every single time. If somebody wanted to engage an economy designer, what's the sort of advice that you would give them?
I mean, getting into game economy design, I think, is firstly like quite a good career move, to be honest, because we're quite sought after. There's not that many people who have the experience, I guess, within the industry. In terms of advice I would give, I think I would say play a lot of games for a start. Play a lot of different genres of game as well. Try and understand why the economies work differently. Try and think about, okay, like what is the difference between the economy of something like Skyrim versus something like Elden Ring versus a mobile idle clicker game, or trying to understand these kind of different models of why the economy is built in the way that it is, and just asking the right questions.
Yeah.
And failing the right questions, ask a lot of questions. Just try and like really get to the bottom of what it is that this is doing for the player experience. Because ultimately, that's what it is, right? Economy is part of game design, it's part of player experience, it's part of the fabric of what makes it makes a good fun core loop into a great game.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. And on that note, thank you very much. So if people wanted to find out more information about what you do and the kinds of ways that you operate, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. So you can go to my website, which is gamesconsulting.net, or find me on LinkedIn, Nick Murray. We probably have mutual contacts, you know what I mean.
Exactly, yeah, and I'm probably one of them. And on that note, thank you very much, Nick. That's been fantastic. So we've been talking about economy design and some of the sort of hurdles and barriers, but the importance of the iteration of that process, where we have to put ourselves into the shoes of the player and try to understand exactly what they're doing, what their kind of choices are going to be, and therefore how their ongoing journey will operate. And that's just as important as how we think about what the commercial value of those experiences are. You want to find out more about this, or basically if you like it, please press the like button. If you enjoy this, please subscribe and obviously share and tell other people. And we'll be back again next time, where we're going to talk more about game economy design, balance, and basically how we make commercial games. Thank you very much.